what is the Laffer curve? Laffer was also a guy that operated under President Reagan, but he said after you raise taxes so much, once you go past that midpoint, people, even though you increase taxes, it brings in less federal revenue to the Treasury because people stop working. And we now have a top federal bracket of about 78%, despite what Warren Buffett says. And you can get there on really earned income just at about $400,000. So what's happening is some of these people are reaching that Laffer curve, and they're saying, I'm not going to work and expend capital to earn 22 cents on the dollar. And they stop working. But a number of people will stop working once you get past the Laffer curve. Finally, it repeals Obamacare. Why is repealing Obamacare so important, folks? Forget about the whole takeover of the healthcare system. Forget about the whole, reproductive pieces that have come out and that sort of thing. Obamacare, in and of itself, is a $1.7 trillion tax on the economy. It hits in 22 months, actually almost 21 months now, almost through March. What happens when people see a $1.7 trillion tax increase come? They freeze. Because you've got a government basically that is out here, and you've got plant and equipment, you've got things that need to be done, but they're hoarding their cash because they're like, do I keep my business? Do I expand my business? Do I expend this cash and then realize I'm going to owe it in taxes, or that I'm going to have to shut my business down? I can take that money and run now. So no one's buying anything. Nobody's investing in plant and equipment. No one's investing in more employees. They are hunkered down, saving their cash right now. And I always say it's like you're sitting on the beach and you're building your beach house, and you look out and you see a tsunami coming. Are you going to finish the beach house? Shoot, no. If you're Christian, you're praying. If you're not, you're running for the highest tree or the highest hill. But you're not going to finish the beach house. And that's what's going on with Obamacare right now. People see this coming, and they are saying, I am not going to do anything in the business cycle right now. Now, the other problem is, it takes over 18% of our economy when you count insurance and healthcare. And I'm totally convinced they made it so that it would crash the system within 5 years, because then we will never be able to recreate a private sector system, and they'll take over that sector of the economy. Those will all be government employees, and their goal is for them to all vote Democrat. And they'll take over the presidency, they'll take over the Congress again. So there's a lot more socialistic pieces behind Obamacare than just the healthcare system. Here's that Laffer curve. Once you get past about 50% tax, we're obviously right here, right now. Except the higher income, some of them have actually gone beyond that break point, and those people obviously are not contributing because there's no incentive for them to work. Is now the time to pass a balanced budget? And this is huge because people say, well, this government spending is vital, and if we don't spend this money, the economy could go back into a recession, and we've got all these precarious situations. Well, let's talk about Oklahoma. I passed a balanced budget, or I helped pass a balanced budget all 10 years I was in the state legislature. Why? Oh, because we have a balanced budget, and I had to. Pretty neat deal. So I can get up here as a candidate and say, pass the balanced budget every year. I'm going to take that to Washington. But what about now? Is this a good time to do that? Let's look at some statistics, and let's use Oklahoma as an example. First of all, at statehood, we didn't have a balanced budget. But we get in our tough times, we have a governor named E.W. Marlin that gets elected in 1936. Right after 1932, remember, FDR got elected, he passed the New Deal and said, we're going to spend our way into prosperity. Marlin gets elected and said, I can do that. I'm going to borrow $500 million, equivalent of about $10 billion today. I'm going to spend Oklahoma into prosperity. But the conservative Democrats in the state legislature, who now today would be Republicans, they decided, we're not going to do this. We're not going to let you mortgage our future. They rejected the plan. And a guy named Milton Phillips, who again today would be a Republican, ran and won the governorship, and we passed the balanced budget by a vote of the people. By the way, E.W. Marlin, he had a nervous breakdown, and he died about a year or two after leaving office. But nothing against the man, but he just had the wrong idea. The point is, don't you think times were pretty tough in Oklahoma in 1939? I mean, we had Dust Bowl, we had depression, we had everything going wrong, but that's when we passed our balanced budget. If we could do it in 1939, our nation, obviously I think, could do it today. What about other countries? What are they doing? Let's look at some examples there. Poland adopted their balanced budget amendment in 1997. Switzerland amended their constitution in 2001. Germany, probably the most fiscally responsible country in the entire planet. They've come a long way since the 30s, since the 20s. They amended their constitution in 2009. And you've heard about Greece, but who's the other country that they talk so bad about that is dragging Greece down? If Greece goes down, Spain goes down. But Spain's on the right track. They amended their constitution. Unlike Greece, they're intent on getting out of this, and they're tightening their belts to do this. So if Spain can do this, why can the United States of America not pass a balanced budget? And my argument is, obviously we can. So let's get there. This is the final slide. Here are the proposals I think that we need to work on. Obviously, we've got to return to what I would call a market-based economics and monetary policy, limiting and auditing the Federal Reserve and limiting their power so that we go back to where we actually have some constraints on our interest rates. And that means basically, if A happens, then B happens. It's not, if A happens and it's politically expedient, then B might happen unless the president's appointees don't want it to happen. That's where we're at right now. And I think it needs to go back to a rule-based system, which it was, actually prior to Clinton, it was a rule-based system. Obviously, we need to enact a balanced budget amendment in congressional earmarks, which is a huge one for me. Enact a line item veto. This one's a little tough because you give this to Obama, it could hurt us. But you have to take the good with the bad, and I think long-term, I saw this thing work under a Republican governor and a Democrat governor. I served 8 years under Keating, 2 under Henry. I saw Henry make some line items that needed to be done. I mean, there were some Republican spending bills that went through that they were wrong, and Henry, in his, to his credit, he vetoed some of the stuff out there and lined up some things out. But this one's a big one. Institute a sunset or expiration date for all federal programs. That's how you start cutting government. It's killing programs. That's not going to be popular. And I'll tell you, I've told a lot of people, this is not a parade we're asking to go to. It's a suicide mission. And if you really think about that, we're going to have to go up there, and I'm going to have to come back here and say, I need to cut your job if you're a federal government employee, or I need to cut your job. Not really conducive to getting votes for re-election. But if we don't do this, we lose our country. So, finally, repeal Obamacare. Remember when we talked about that? Dodd-Frank. We talked about that a minute ago. Dodd-Frank was the financial regulatory bill that basically blamed all of the ills of the financial crisis of 2008 on who? Your community bank, who had nothing to do with it. One of the proposals in Dodd-Frank, I'll give you a little precursor to your next meeting, is it requires that you have a commercial real estate appraisal for virtually every loan. Now, what if you, as a banker, I used to actually work at a bank, what if I know that business owner across the street, he wants to put a new awning on his business, which is going to increase his traffic flow, going to increase his business. It's going to cost $25,000 to put that new awning on there. He wants a loan from me. I've banked with him for 40 years. He's never been so much as one day late on the payment. I have to go do a commercial real estate appraisal that may cost $3,000, and it's going to add the cost to that loan. He looks at me and says, you've got to be kidding me. He doesn't do the loan. He doesn't do the awning. Business cycle doesn't expand in your community. The loan doesn't get made. The banker doesn't make any money. The guy's business ends up closing because he didn't get enough traffic. That's what's happening. Is government is overseeing all that stuff like that. The other thing is, what about your small loan companies that charge excess interest? It is going to do away with those and make your bank make those same loans at lower interest. Make that work, guys. Because a lot of those people don't pay those loans. They have to charge higher interest rate. I talked to a guy in McAllister out of all walls. I went to school with his son. He writes off $1.5 million a quarter from those loans. But because he writes off that much, he's able to make loans, but he charges 30%. But that's the only way he can make money. But if there's a market for that, it's not in your bank. The bank doesn't want that loan. It's going to do away with that entire sector. So if you have a finance company in your community, say goodbye to that under Dodd-Frank. That's part of the new Financial Regulatory Act that they just issued the regulations for January. So we haven't been hit by that yet. That's going to happen. Island Apartment Insurance Company in Tulsa, one of the first things they did with that was they came in and looked at all of our investments.